And our third main topic today gets submitted to us by Edward Meyer, who writes, "Hey, John. So I get that sometimes stuff in movies doesn't age well, like certain types of jokes or references. But is there a point where we're taking it too far? The original Spider-Man movie just edited out a simple joke where Peter says to Macho Man, 'That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?' If they're editing out little stuff like that, what won't they take out? What are your thoughts?" All right, thanks a lot for sending that in, man. And of course, the Spider-Man movies, we've been celebrating them a lot, especially celebrating the original films lately because Spider-Man No Way Home came out and we had Tobey and Andrew come back. And of course, it made us all nostalgic and looking back fondly at the old original Tobey Spider-Man movies. By the way, to this day, Spider-Man 2 is still arguably the best. I still think the two best Spider-Man movies of all time are the ones Marvel didn't make. I think Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse are the two. I don't know which order I put them in necessarily, but I think those are the two best Spider-Man movies ever. But it got kicked off with Spider-Man 1. Now, you guys will remember that in Spider-Man 1, Tobey Maguire decides he's going to test out his new powers, and he's going to get into a wrestling ring with Randy the Macho Man Savage, who went by the name in the movie of Bonesaw. And so he was going in against Bonesaw. And of course, this is where we started to get a little glimpse of, and he says something along the lines of, "Cute outfit, did your husband give it to you?" Well, some viewers on television noticed that in a recent, airing of the original Spider-Man movie, that scene was completely taken out. That clip, that line was completely taken out. This comes to us from the folks over at Screen Rant that write the following. In Raimi's Spider-Man, there's an early scene when Peter Parker is beginning to test out his powers by earning money in a cage match with a wrestler named Bonesaw, of course, the late, great Randy the Macho Man Savage, one half of the Mega Powers. Anyway, in addition to wearing an early prototype version of his iconic costume, he also begins to show off a bit of the sarcastic, quippy nature that will go on to define the Spider-Man character. There it is. Unfortunately, this early stab at comedy results in a homophobic line where he attempts to insult Bonesaw by saying, "That's a cute outfit. Did your husband give it to you?" This line is very typical of the casual homophobia that was common in the media of the early 2000s, but it's certainly one of the Spider-Man's moments that have aged the poorest. All right, that comes us to again from Screen Rant. Okay, so what do I think about them taking that line out? Well, here's the thing. We got to remember that I got some emails from people this morning that are really panicked about this. It's like they're editing things out of Spider-Man. And I want to make something very, very, very clear. They have not edited anything out of Spider-Man the movie. All right. This edit was for broadcast television. And there's something that you need to remember. Broadcast TV edits every movie that goes out onto broadcast, okay? Every movie, whether it's profanity or whether it's nudity or whether it's some edgy stuff, whatever, television has been editing these movies for broadcast since I was born, man. I mean, this has been happening all the time. This is nothing new. Okay, it's nothing new. It's nothing strange. It's nothing to be overtly concerned about. Now, again, putting that down, that do not worry, guys, they did not edit the movie. Like if you go and buy a copy of the original Spider-Man movie, that line is still in there. They didn't take it out. This is just for broadcast television. So we've got to look at it in that context, that this was just for a television broadcast in which they edit almost everything. Okay, so understanding that context, is it understandable that they took that one line out? Well, probably. I mean, even Tobey Maguire in an interview a few years ago kind of brought up that line, saying he kind of wished that line wasn't in it now. But it brings up I saw an interesting conversation about this, because you know how like Gone with the Wind, right? And some of the older style movies that, they represented a mindset at the time that was wrong now and was wrong then. But, they put a warning at the beginning of some movies now. They just say, hey, this feature film you're about to receive reflects attitudes of a certain era that we were in. And we're not, by still having that in there, we're not saying that we endorse those attitudes. We're just saying, just be aware, this movie's from a different era. And I think we all liked that. I think we all liked that as a nice compromise for some of those older movies. I saw an interesting discussion this morning. Some people were having about, well, maybe for things like this, they should put that same kind of caveat at the beginning, saying, hey, listen, there are remember this movie came out 20 years ago. And there are some attitudes reflected in the movie that are reflective of that era that aren't necessarily today. So just be warned as you're watching the movie and then leave it in. I'm not completely opposed to that idea either. But again, at the end of the day, we're talking about an edit they made for television. So something they do with every movie. So to me, it's actually, even though it's a non-story, it still raises an interesting thing. Like, what do we start to do with movies? Like, we've talked about movies that came out of the 50s and 60s and maybe putting little caveats at the beginning. But at what era should we start? Should we do that with some movies from the 80s, some movies from the 90s, where we just leave things in, but we put these little disclaimers? I don't know. I think there's some interesting discussions to be had there. What do you guys think about that? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down into the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. That's a terrible Randy Macho Man. I'm never going to do Randy Macho Man Savage again. I'm terrible at that. That was awful. I apologize to the viewing world. All right. Guys, we want to take just a minute and thank the sponsor of this video, Masterclass. Masterclass is offering classes on a wide variety of topics, like all taught by world-class masters at the absolute tops of their field. Each class is broken down out into individual video lessons, usually like around 10 minutes or so long, and members can explore at their own pace. And each class is supported by downloadable materials, lessons, recipes, or more that you can all find at masterclass.com. For example, are you into streaming? Well, you can take the Building Your Streaming class taught by ninjas so you can sharpen up on your streaming skills. Or if you're interested in independent filmmaking, take independent filmmaking from Academy Award winner Spike Lee. You want to get classes on how to direct? How about from Ron Howard? The very first one I personally looked up and got into was Business Leadership by the great Big Papa Iger, Bob Iger himself. And I was absolutely enthralled with it. I love every single minute of this stuff. If any of those apply to you, you need to try Masterclass. So I highly recommend that you check it out. Get unlimited access to every Masterclass. And as a John Campea Show viewer, you get 15% off an annual membership. Go to masterclass.com/Campea. Once again, to get 15% off your annual membership, go to masterclass.com/Campea.